Rado, how has your 2021 been so far?
Not massive change from 2020. I think this year is overrated so far.
No, I gotta tell you, like, I mean, I think like when we recorded last week, there was like an insurrection happening in the US at the time, and this is where the turning point started to come for me. I think in terms of 2021 already coming fucking out the door, kicking and screaming, fucking loaded 12 gauge, and the insurrection happened, right? Real low point, kind of globally. It does impact globally, but primarily it's in the US. So, there's still, it's like the shockwaves kind of felt around the world. Like, oh, they really attempted to try and, bring down democracy for what it's worth. But then in the aftermath of that was like the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of like, all of the social media networks started not only pulling Trump off kind of banning him permanently, but also a lot of the sort of like QAnon people, the Parler got completely imploded entirely as like, it got pulled from multiple app stores, and then Amazon Web Services were like, we're not letting you host anymore on here because this is just got out of control. And I'm of the opinion that this should have happened a long time ago, but there are arguments that people can make as to why some of the stuff should be allowed to be out there and open and be seen by people, but I disagree, and that's fine. But it has been this like total and utter cleanup that has started to happen ever since. And from 2 days from now when we record, we get Joe Biden sworn in as president. And I have had like weird moments where I've been like, oh, what if something bad happens at the inauguration, because there's a lot of threats about it. But ultimately, I think it's going to be fine. And then I'm like, I've already seen that Biden has declared, a whole bunch of things like rejoining the Paris climate agreement, like on the Wednesday as soon as he's inaugurated. It's like straight to work. They're making masks, like a mandate on masks and interstate travel across the US. And so how does that affect us here? Well, I've spoke about on before that I feel like the cinema industry suffers because the US can't open their cinemas.
That's true, yes.
And if they won't open their cinemas, they won't release their movies. And therefore, we don't get to go see movies here, even though we've kind of, I don't want to say we've got things under control. We absolutely do not in any way, shape or form have things under control. But there has been brief moments where we have shown that we can do things kind of safely and appropriately, even in the middle of it. And we're firing in the right directions with vaccines and stuff like that at the minute. But it's just a little bit more stability. And then on top of that, so you've got all of this kind of like geopolitical stuff happening. It's all been very exciting, and it's all trending in a positive way, and it feels good for the first time in a long time. It feels good. It feels like, I don't necessarily agree with all of these things, but it's better than what was there. And what was there, in my opinion, had such a poisonous effect on our governments here and our country here and the way people are acting here. And that was all kind of emanating from the US, in my opinion. So to see this kind of like brighter skies ahead, I'm feeling better about it already. On top of all that, fucking WandaVision. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah. I can hear you are so fired up today. I just can't wait to hear your opinion about WandaVision, some other things we're going to be discussing today. Big kind of show going on in the US, and I had this discussion over the Christmas, and I think there is too much attention brought to this country, whatever is happening inside the US, inside the politics, whatever, but it's like a big show, you really can't get your eyes off whatever those, I don't want to use the bad word, but whatever those guys are doing over there. But it's kind of interesting. I think things are going in a good direction, but just in case, like for the posterity, we're gonna record two things. Nothing happened during the Biden inauguration. Oh, what a horrible thing happened during Biden inauguration.
Yeah.
Just in case,
I can't believe
one of those two things will be true. 100%.
Yeah, mad.
Right, let's jump into the podcast.
Yeah, let's do it.
You ready?
I was born ready.
Hello and welcome to The Blockbusters, a podcast about the wonderful world of cinema and TV. This is a podcast about the movies and TV shows we love, no matter how big, no matter how small. My name is Rado. I'm here with Conor. Hey, Conor.
Hello, hello, hello.
And we're here to talk about movies, TV shows, and whatever is gonna happen in 2021. So we had those two amazing episodes that... in those two episodes, we kind of put our stamp on 2020. We closed it in an envelope. We sent it away. This is all available to listen right now on all your streaming platforms of choice, like Apple Podcast, Overcast, Spotify, and so on and so on. So if you want to check what we liked, what we loved in 2020, please give it a go. And thank you for listening, for giving us a shot. This is a show that we love doing. We just essentially love talking about movies, and hope you enjoying it too. Give us a thumbs up, obviously, on your streaming podcast platform of choice, but also you can give us rating. Find us on Twitter at BlockbustersPod or at RDefaulta or at Design Conor. Conor, we have many things to talk about today, and quickly let's jump in what we're going to be discussing. We have some news to cover, not that many news. I think normally in January we'll be ramping up towards Oscars, like you mentioned before we went on air, but no such big news actually. However, there are some things we wanted to touch on. We have an interview as well today, which is hopefully this is going to be a new feature and it's going to be there more and more often. This is the interview I made in Venice with director Andrey Konchalovskiy, and we were talking about his latest movie, Dear Comrades, that's available on a streaming platform in the UK. And we have some films to talk about, to review. We will be touching on Midnight Sky, Wonder Woman 1984, and two TV shows available on Disney+. We need to close The Mandalorian because we've not finished talking about it. So we have two episodes to discuss, and we gonna talk about WandaVision.
Oh boy.
And this is gonna be a long and epic episode. Netflix has announced like a ton of movies, or literally a movie every week. So I would say 52 movies for this year, and they will be kind of released on those bases. We had the very first movie that was released in 7th of January. That was Pieces of a Woman. It's a movie I tried to get to Conor to watch. I've seen this last year, and it's a fantastic, harrowing movie. It's a definitely one of those films that you maybe not necessarily be like very cheered when you watch it, but you will appreciate it when you watch it. And I want to encourage for anyone who maybe want to see how the real long takes are done. So this movie has almost an opening scene that's about 30 minutes long. That's done in actually one shot. It's been rehearsed 5 or 6 times, and they shot it after that. But it's not a very pleasant experience. However, it's a very interesting film. So this is Kornél Mundruczó's. This is Hungarian director. His international debut with Vanessa Kirby and Shia LaBeouf. We probably heard more about Shia than we needed to in the last few weeks, but let's escape on that. Let's go back to the movies. So the movies are kind of all over the place in terms of like you get comedies, romance, you get action flicks, you get probably a bit of drama, a bit of costume drama. And we watched the trailer together with Conor, and we were just scratching our heads like, what a piece of tosh. But then you start digging into the films, and there are a few really interesting titles I really want to watch. Very, very soon, I think in February, we're going to have a film with David Washington and Zendaya called Malcolm and Marie. That's like a black and white movie. That looks
trailer looks cool for that.
That looks incredible.
Real fucking intense.
Yeah, there's another film about a couple that kind of doesn't really get along that well after a specific thing. We have The Dig coming 29th of January, and this is a film with Carey Mulligan and Ralph Fiennes. That sounds interesting. I mean, that's not going to be probably a deal breaker, but definitely it's one of the most ambitious titles there. And we also have a film, and I ask you whether you've watched that, and you were asking me, what is this? Let me just find the title. Yeah, Outside the Wire, and this is a new film with Anthony Mackie. He's playing like an android officer, and when I watched the trailer on Netflix on Friday when it dropped, I thought to myself, I'm not watching this unless someone pays me to watch this.
Yeah.
What do you think in general on the lineup that Netflix announced?
Yeah, I think this goes back to what I talked about on a few previous episodes ago, where Netflix's approach is very much like a shotgun splatter, right? And it's just like their interest here is like not necessarily quality. They're not trying to be the streaming service known for like smash hit after smash hit of like highly regarded within the sort of film critic circles approach. That's not what they want, right? They want audience, they want people, they want content, they want a library, huge big library, so that you can go on to Netflix at any point in time and there's something new or something that was 6 months ago that you totally missed and you never paid any attention to, and now the algorithm has kind of fed it back up to you and you can watch it and you can enjoy it. We have seen that before with some stuff that they had released that didn't kind of catch on right away, and it was only after a few weeks or a few months where it kind of got cycled through and then it started to shuffle its way up the most watched lists, right? Like, this makes a lot of sense for what Netflix are doing, and I think it's I think it is the right way for them to approach this, right? Like we spoke about the trailer itself that they kind of attached to it with The Rock and Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds, and I was like, this feels like a weird decision to put this trailer out, because the audience that they want are the sort of people who will go on a Friday evening or a Saturday evening or a Tuesday evening and they see a movie and they go, oh, that's cool, that looks cool, The Rock is in that, let's watch this. They don't follow the news, they don't watch what's happening, they don't like care about the Oscars, like that. None of this stuff really matters to the audience that Netflix are looking for here. So to make a trailer that was then filled with movies that are that type of movie, instead of showing off a little bit more of the likes of The Dig or I don't know what else was there. Yeah, like Malcolm and Marie, like, you know, those clips of those trailers in there would have made a more interesting, like, you know, snapshot for you and I. And I feel like you and I are the target audience for this video that they put out, kind of promoting all of this. But the actual movies in the trailer, both of us were like, none of these really look like anything we would care that much about watching. Like,
yeah,
you know,
even the good quality. Yeah, even the good quality films are probably lost there somewhere between those like explosions and special effects and stupid jokes and whatever. You know, like we've been talking about Netflix quite a lot, rightfully so. And last week I've watched two films that are right now kind of fighting for like to be nominated to an Oscar entry in a foreign film category, both on Netflix. One is a Taiwanese movie called A Son. The other one is a Mexican movie called I'm No Longer Here. And those are really great films, but no one's talking about them. Like, no one's mentioning them because they are, you know, they land on Netflix. They are seen by 3 people, and Netflix, instead of promoting that, just put something else on top, another like true crime drama that people is gonna kind of just eat up and eat up. Yeah, and I think this is also, Connor, our job here a little bit, you know, to maybe just search for those gems and promote them. That's why, please, this year you will not hear me talking about another smash boom explosion extravaganza from Netflix, I will be talking about other films. That's my pledge to you.
You're not going to watch the one with Chris Hemsworth on a boat wearing sunglasses? No.
Don't give a...
What about the one where the Rock jumps across a bridge as an explosion happens behind him?
I've seen the explosion. That's enough, I think. Yeah.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see. As we dedicate 25 minutes to talking about one of these movies in a future episode.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Oh, God. You're right. Like, in a sense, like what we kind of hope to portray from the show is that, like, we can either watch some of these and come back here and say, yeah, I didn't like this because, or actually this is really, really interesting and it will probably go unnoticed and you should go and check it out or pick it up, I was gonna say pick it up.
That over the how many shows we've done, 31 shows, this is a 32 episode number 32, we very rarely talked about films and we kind of dissed them. Like we said, this movie is not worth your time, it's completely rubbish. Very, like, maybe 2 or 3 movies like that when we were both agreeing to them. Most of the times one of us is actually defending a movie.
Yes.
And I think it's a waste of our time to watch that sort of movie. Or maybe if we watched it, just discuss it in the longer term. I think we had this before when we both decided, say, we're not talking about this movie. This is tosh. This is rubbish.
Yeah.
But let's concentrate on something that is a little bit better. And talking about better things, that's a very bad segue.
That's terrible.
It's a very bad segue. We just quickly gonna jump on to something we both don't believe is gonna be a good film, but happy to report that Zack Snyder, apparently on one of the platforms, streaming platforms, actually Zack Snyder's film also is gonna be on Netflix. Army of the Dead. Yeah, so that's gonna be the new film by Zack Snyder and starring Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
So Zack Snyder. Yeah, Zack Snyder on the platform Vero, called Vero. Have you heard about the social media platform Vero?
Nope.
No one heard about it, actually.
Yeah.
But Zack Snyder is the only person who's using it, and some people who follow him. He actually answered to the question from the fan that is this still gonna be TV show? He said this is gonna be one movie. So Justice League that he's working on, he did some reshoots. It's gonna be coming this year to HBO Max, and that's definitely one of the kind of big titles this year. I'm kind of looking forward to see how this is gonna pan out. You obviously not interested in it. When we are talking about Warner Bros, we were talking about a lot of films released in 2021 on HBO Max. And we were talking about the releases, delays, and everything. One movie that's actually not going to be released later, but earlier, as it turns out to be, Godzilla vs. Kong is not going to be released in May, but it's going to be released in March 2021. And that's a kind of interesting move because we kind of don't anticipate cinemas to open. I think Warner Bros. In general kind of said they gave up on the stuff that probably is not going to make money, and they just strictly going to go, let's just release this shit. Let's just put it out to people. Yeah.
Yep. This is the transition then for HBO away from being the HBO stamp of we don't have a huge library, but what we have is quality. That's what we're known for. And this is the transition away from that. We're seeing it play out now in real time, where it's we don't care if all of our stuff is not, a 9 out of 10 or Oscar nominated or BAFTA nominated or Emmy or whatever. We don't care. What we want is people to subscribe to HBO Max. And to do that, we feel like we need content. We need a big library. Yeah. Which is to some extent true, right? Because with HBO, you had to have a cable subscription in the US. And you didn't have a library that you went back to. You watched it when it aired, and that was it. And then you could catch it on reruns after that. There was no library for you to go to. And I feel like with people's sort of the way that they approach streaming services at the minute is that there has to be a library. And I felt like even with Disney Plus when it launched, I remember feeling a little bit myself, but also I remember hearing it an awful lot. People are like, oh, it's kind of cool that it's got all this the old Disney stuff on there. It's got the entire back catalog, but there's nothing really new to watch, so I'm probably going to cancel my subscription. You're right, because at the time, like, it launched with Mandalorian season 1, and then that was it. It was really bits and pieces, drips.
Just watch it, cancel it.
Yeah.
What else is there to watch?
Yeah, and Netflix are trying to avoid that, like, there is nothing, so I'm just going to cancel it. Netflix are trying to say, no, every time you come on, we're going to have something for you. And HBO want to do that. They want to do that. And I don't think it's going to work out for them, if I'm being honest. I just don't. I don't think they have the infrastructure that Netflix have managed to build over the last 10 years to be able to do this. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out. There was one piece of news that you dug out as well about Warner Bros.
Yeah, this is in relation to Ray Fisher. So it's kind of in his role as Cyborg in Justice League. And I find it interesting that, this has already been an absolute train wreck of a story, right? Like what's happening with this, and to now go from being like a 4 or 5 part sort of series, each episode being about an hour, to now being a 4-hour movie. Like that's a huge decision to make in terms of like editing the show. Like that's a huge undertaking to make for something that's supposed to be coming out in a few months' time. That's already a recut of something that has released that was a recut of what it was originally, right? So it's such a weird decision that they're like, no, we're going with this episodic thing. It's like 1 hour every week. It's gonna be great and crazy and cool, and we're gonna have lots more time, to now being like, we want you to sit in front of your TV for 4 hours while Zack Snyder just has fun with the DCEU.
I don't think actually this movie will be 4 hours. I think whatever the expectations were are kind of like he probably looked at the footage and he can't make this movie longer than 2.5, and that's my guess from it. And he decided also that cutting it to TV episodes that would make sense is much more difficult than he thought, and he said, let's just release it as a film.
I think you're underestimating Zack Snyder's huge ego, because that man is an egomaniac, and I think that you're completely underestimating the fact that he legitimately, I feel like, feels like he could put a 6-hour movie of the Justice League out and would expect that everyone would watch it and adore it. We'll
find out.
That's the impression that I get. Anyway, back to Ray Fisher. Ray Fisher played Cyborg in the movie. He doesn't appear an awful lot in the theatrical release because Joss Whedon kind of rewrote a lot of his stuff and kind of writ him out as a character mostly, which is why he barely has anything to do in that whole movie, even though you can still tell that his plot point in the movie and his purpose in the movie is very, very, very important to what's actually happening in the movie, but yet he has no screen time whatsoever. And Ray Fisher has kind of been more and more vocal about this over the past few months. First of all, being quite vocal about his dislike for Joss Whedon and how he behaved on set and stuff like that. And then that kind of started to become more about the DC Films president, Walter Hamada, who Fisher has publicly called a dangerous enabler. And feels like he is the reason behind why a lot of his stuff was left on the cutting room floor, and said that he refused to do any work going forward on DC projects as long as he would continue to be president, in which DC responded by extending Walter Hamada's contract for like 5 years. Right.
Wow.
And bear in mind, what's even stranger about this is that I feel like Ray Fisher's fighting the good fight here, but it's a losing battle, because one of the people who have kind of sort of defended him has been Zack Snyder. Snyder has defended him and said, like, he has a part to play here, and we had lots of conversations about his character and developed his character together, and he was so integral to the building of Cyborg, and it feels really weird then to get like radio silence from not just him, not just Snyder, but all of his castmates. Like you don't hear anything. You don't hear anything about any of the other DCEU cast coming out and being like, Ray Fisher is totally right here, and this guy is out of control and should not be president. Like if you even look back to a few months ago, when the Marvel people, like a lot of the Marvel actors, had like a sort of like a rally or something like that there for Joe Biden, and Chris Pratt wasn't in attendance. And Chris Pratt is kind of well known as he probably votes more Republican, whatever, it doesn't really matter, but he doesn't necessarily support Joe Biden, let's say that, right? And he started getting a lot of attention for this online, that he did not show up to this, and how could he be a Trump supporter and all this here. And all of the other Marvel casts, like Mark Ruffalo, like came to his defense. And we're like, no, like he is such like a nice person, and like we totally stand by him, and everyone makes their own decisions, blah, 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 blah. And we don't need hate on anything. And you feel like if one of the Marvel cast came out and said, hey, I have had a terrible time making this movie, and the director was terrible, or the studio boss was awful to work under and was a borderline abusive and stuff like that, you feel like the other big stars would be right out and being like, hey, this is not cool, and we're not okay with this. Whereas from the DC side of things, like, not only has everyone been completely radio silent, including Zack Snyder, but they also then DC, it's just extended his contract for like 5 years, right? And it's like that. What a sign to Ray Fisher that we don't care what you're saying. Like, we don't care. And I have to ask Rado, like, how the fuck did this guy's contract get extended? This series of, like, this whole DCEU is an absolute fucking train wreck, and there's been a few big like blockbuster movies that have made plenty of money and all whoop-de-doo, but Jesus Christ, they fucking suck. And for them to be like, you're the guy, we want you leading us through the next sort of 5 years, I'm like, what the fuck is going on over here? I just don't get it. So yeah, I feel like Ray Fisher is fighting the good fight here, but I just don't think anybody cares. I feel like he's gonna potentially end up doing more harm to his own kind of long-term career as he becomes someone who is, openly outspoken in Hollywood, which then you find that Hollywood say, we don't really want you associated with our projects because we are scared of you saying bad stuff about us in the press, right? That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, I hope that was a rhetorical question rather than question to me, because I don't know how this guy got his job. Sorry, Connor, I have no idea. I will not answer your questions.
Absolutely, whatsoever. I couldn't believe when they were like, "Yep, this is the guy." We're this was even after the Ray Fisher had publicly said this guy's a bad news, and DC were like, "Don't know what you're talking about. Never know. Seems pretty good here. Looks, movies doing okay. Yeah, I think. How about a new contract?"
And they have a plan. Jesus. Plan is to release everything.
God. Just do whatever.
Yeah. Before we jump into the interview, I wanted to do a quick update on film festivals, because I know that you are super interested in what's going to be happening in the world of film festivals, Connor. Yeah, of course you are. Berlinale 2021, always in February. So February, end of February, beginning of February, depending on like how they plan it. This year they said, no, that's not going to happen. Obviously, what's happening in the world with COVID and travel bans and whatever. So Berlinale is going to have be a little bit postponed. However, there will be this platform for the European market, for co-production market. So Berlinale Talents, essentially a lot of deals for European movies are making place during that European film market in Berlin every year. So whatever comes out later, we see, a few years later, big co-productions between countries, like big films. They happen during that film market. It will happen online in March, and also later on in June, they kind of foresee that this will be happening. There will be a summer event with a lot of film screenings for the public, and for audiences, and cinemas also will be on open air, which sounds really cool, and hopefully this will come, and this will essentially happen. In May, Cannes, the 2021 should be happening, but we still don't have a confirmation. I think it's a bit too early, and as last year, organizers going to play it by the ear, depending on what will happen in the world. I don't think this is an event again that's going to take place in May 2021. I might be wrong. And so we have a confirmation of a first festival that I think will be happening normally. This is Venice 2021, first 2 weeks of September. Le jury president is going to be Bong Joon-ho, the director of Parasite.
Yeah, I read that actually.
Yeah, that's a confirmation from Venice, and Venice is going to have actually a new sidebar section called Orizzonti Extra. So just to give you a quick explanation what that will be. So Venice Film Festival has this the main competition section, which has like the biggest titles, biggest directors, probably about 20 films there. And there is the side section called Orizzonti, which has a little bit more kind of rougher films, maybe smaller films, and they premiere there as well. But there's going to be another section called Orizzonti Extra, which will be open to all experimental works, and it's going to be a kind of look in the future. I know that people who go to Venice, they essentially avoid things like Orizzonti, because it's kind of a little bit off the radar, and maybe not a lot of stuff is interesting there. However, I think Orizzonti Extra, that's going to be a little bit even more, edgy. That might not be to everyone's taste, but I think it's super interesting to have this this section. This sidebar has like the requirements are the movie needs to be at least 60 minutes long, but no restrictions in terms of how long it's going to be over that 60 minutes. No restrictions in terms of the style of the genre. It can be anything. It can be animated movie that lasts 4 hours, or it can be like a very slow movie, which is essentially almost like Orizzonti, to be honest. So that's the update of the film festivals, like the big three so far. Hopefully we will learn more in incoming months.
Cool.
And if we are talking about Venice, last year when I went to Venice, I did a few interviews, and one of them was a meeting with Andrey Konchalovskiy. Do you know this name, Connor? You heard about Andrey Konchalovskiy?
No.
Have you seen the movie Tango and Cash?
No, I have not.
But you heard about Tango and Cash?
Yeah, I've heard of Tango and Cash. I've never seen anything.
Yeah. So Andrey Konchalovskiy is a Russian director. He made his debut in the 60s and 70s. He was a screenwriter. And in the 80s, it turned out that he had this very small career in the US. He was making movies in the US. He made The Runaway Train, and he made Tango and Cash. But, this didn't last long, and I don't want to go in there whether he didn't like it, whether they didn't like what he actually came up with. But he came back to Russia, and he keeps on making movies. He's about 80 years old. So this year we managed to actually interview him, and the star of his film, and that's played by Yuliya Vysotskaya. And imagine this kind of beautiful day in Venice when there's sunny and it's kind of warm. You go into the hotel. This is the Excelsior Hotel in Lido, the kind of the very nice, very posh hotel when all the stars are actually stop, and you go to a room, and this is a big room, big airy room with a balcony, and you can see the sea from there. And there's this couple sitting in like a very big sofa, and they look like a royal couple a little bit. He's 80 years old. She's about 50. They are a couple as well in the real life. The older gentleman dressed very neatly, and his companion, Yuliya, in a white dress, both sun-kissed skin, She's sitting in the sunglasses, and you feel like you're actually not gonna interview the director and the actor, but you're gonna interview some sort of royal couple that came from Russia. And you're gonna be talking about the film that you just watched called Dear Comrades.
Товарищи, должен сказать, что наши рабочие и будут работать над созданием материальных благ для построения коммунизма, товарищи!
В городе одни разговоры, повышение цен на продовольствие.
Ну, чего там? Ну, а что? В Советском Союзе голод.
Dear Comrades is a story of a strike and the aftermath of it that took place in 1962 in Novocherkassk. Ludmila is a party executive and devout communist who had fought in World War II for Stalin. Certain that her work will create a communist society, the woman detests any anti-Soviet sentiment. But during a strike at the local electromotive factory, Ludmila witnesses a laborers' picket that is gunned down under the orders of a government that seeks to cover that strike in media. This event that the film Dear Comrades depicts, the communist government did everything they could to suppress the information about the strike and the shooting, cut the city communication lines, and dug this event in the archives for many, many years. So first thing I asked Andrey Konchalovskiy was, did you know anything about this event at that time?
I didn't know anything about it. And I found about this suppression of 90s, and I didn't pay much attention to it because, you know, crimes are crimes. Sometimes, you know, sometimes some people kill others. It's all the time like this. Then I start to think about what can be done with this background. And it was maybe 10 years after I start to think that I maybe should write a tragic role for Yuliya, because I found that she is able to do a tragical character. A tragical character is not dramatic. It's a different thing. It's kind of no tears. Glowing thing that doesn't have tears.
Yuliya Vysotskaya, actress playing Ludmila, comes from that region, and I was wondering whether people living there would know about this fact.
Nobody in my surroundings, my friends or relatives, nobody ever talked about it, never. But then, yeah, we all discovered at the end of the 80s, after the perestroika, we knew that it happened, but to be honest, it wasn't, nobody was really interested to dig in and, you know, to cry out loud about the truth what happened.
Only in 1992, official investigation revealed what really happened during those years. But this was not the director's idea for the film. Here's Konchalovskiy again.
Every state does crime sometimes, and usually it's a secret. I don't know who doesn't, frankly speaking. I don't know who. But usually is when the state does a crime, he shows ballet on the television. Whatever. Wherever. I think in Soviet Union it was the same thing. For me, it wasn't something that is really what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the character that loses a convinced communist, convinced Stalinist, very pure, very innocent and politically militant woman that believes in communism and Stalin, all of a sudden gets into a situation that the reality is different. And I think there are many communists in Soviet Union after 20th Congress. They were very, very, very upset that they ruined the image of Stalin. And I think it was bad decision for Khrushchev. Bad decision. I agreed with Mao Zedong, who said Khrushchev is an idiot. He betrayed communism. And Mao Zedong is still on the wall in Peking, and they're building society with Mao Zedong. And that's, I think, one of the primitive decision of Khrushchev, who was really a peasant and a Trotskyist. He was not very smart person.
The film, Dear Comrades, is in black and white. It's shot in a 4:3 ratio, like Ida or like Cold War. And to question why, Konchalovskiy simply said, because I like it. The film also has a production design that takes you there, to the 60s. For many viewers, it can feel nostalgic.
There is no nostalgia. It's a comment. You can say nostalgic because you feel that it's proper, that it's exactly 60s. But to make you believe that it's exactly 60s, this is my profession, to make you believe. Because there are many films about 60s and they look fake. But you know, in that sense, I think it's important to have culture. Altogether, and also study. I never shoot the film without knowing what is under the bed of my character and how it goes in make P or some whatever, it doesn't matter. Everything in that sense should be, how to put it, you don't think about it, you don't say, oh, this is truth, this is truth, this is truth. No, it goes you like air, because truth is in human characters. But when write human character in the fake costume, you already feel ruined. It's a ruin. Like you see serials about Borgia. I cannot watch it, it's so fake. Or a film about the revolution today, or Russian revolution. I cannot say, it looks horrible. It's so fake because young people, unfortunately, don't want to be meticulous. And of course, faces 1960s are different from faces 1920s or 2020. The faces are Soviet. And before revolution, they were all anti-Soviet. It's strange, but you know, it goes inside under the skin.
But in short, if you are interested, Soviet face doesn't know, for example, what selfie is. And it looks completely different than our faces in 2020. Konchalovskiy also denied having one himself. When the movie premiered in Venice in September 2020, there was something that happened. I don't remember exactly what that was. That resonated with the audience so much more than usual. And Konchalovskiy says he didn't want to be seen as a prophet. He's not interested in the present.
I never think about present when I do a film. I'm thinking about eternity. Intentions of every interviewer or journalist or a critic to find a system of thinking. It means to put something in order, that kind of order. It's normal for human being put in order everything. But then comes quantum leap, and the order is dissolved in chaos, because life is in chaos for human being, but for God, everything is in order. I'm trying to find logic in the chaos of cosmos. You know, because I usually quote Einstein, who said, only one thing I can understand, God's desire. The rest is just detail. The rest is detail. God's design. What is God's design? That's interesting.
Character played by Yuliya is a Soviet woman. She's a Stalinist who makes some controversial decision and then looks for solitude in faith. It's not the first time that Konchalovskiy has made his heroine multidimensional, like in previous films. or in the previous film Paradise.
In Paradise, the main character is a Nazi who likes Chekhov, who plays Brahms, who's very handsome, who's very innocent, who is absolute Nazi. Very interesting. The same thing, Julia's character is a mirror of that. Stalinist, communist, at the same time discovers God. I mean, I like to think about this generation of communism in 1930s. They are great characters. They are all, including Trotsky, by the way. And they were very interesting. They really were believers and fighters. Great characters, and Gramsci, Togliatti, very interesting. Castro, or Che Guevara, fantastic character, Che Guevara. Absolutely like Don Quixote. Fantastic character, believer, very interesting. No one did really good thing about it. Good thing. I mean, there was Evita, some poor film about Che Guevara, but I think Che Guevara is very close to Lenin in that sense. He has the same kind of impatience, which is very interesting to consider philosophically, not ideology, but philosophically. It's very ambiguous and ambivalent. It's everything in life.
After the bloodbath, when survivors flee from the square, Ludmila realizes her daughter has disappeared. A gaping rift opens in her worldview. Despite the blockade of the city, mass arrests, and the authorities' attempts to cover the massacre, Ludmila searches for her daughter. And I had to ask Yuliya, was it hard for her as an actress to go through whatever her character is going? Because she has really, really heart-wrenching scenes that the physically we can see that her character is struggling and is testing the lines. Her answer was very surprising.
It is like also in Paradise. I know people ask me if it's difficult, with filming in the camp, concentration camp, etc. Every single moment, such a joy, such thrilling experience, not only for an actress, but for a human being to be. And also, two things I want to say about Andrey, because he will never say it to me himself. But I admire, first of all, his way of work with his style of shooting. He doesn't make actor suffer and wait endlessly. Everybody's always complaining, acting for film is such a difficult thing because you wait, and then you do 2 minutes, it's over. And you don't know, and you lost your energy while waiting. You never wait on Andrey's set because actors come when everybody else is prepared. You are loved so much, not only by the director, but by everybody else. And the group of those, we all think in the same direction. So it gives you this collective force to perform at your best level. And then also, while listening of the interview, today is the third day of the interview, and it just occurred to me over this table, this meeting, probably some other director or person would thrive on the idea of this actuality of the events that happen in the world today. The only this man I know, for him it's not a compliment because it's something bigger. And we created a story about something bigger than actual. Whatever terrible things happen today, day after tomorrow, 2 years after, the world goes on, and unfortunately, bad things happen every day. And I'm so grateful that I can say I have something to do with this position in life. That it's not about terrible things that actually happening right now. It's about something bigger, about person losing her illusions and finding God. And it's for me, and thank you for all your questions because you made me think about some very important things. Thank you.
And that summarizes the movie very well. So, Dear Comrades, this is a movie that's available right now on VOD on Curzon Home Cinema. It should be available in a few weeks on other streaming platforms. Really interesting film about what happened in Russia in 1962, and film about something that's still happening in the real world, in our democratic societies, when the government decides to block all the information about what really happened, and this is also about people who lost their faith in the politics or in the people who are ruling them. Dear Comrades, available on VOD in the UK. Conor, on our lovely podcast, it's time to review some films.
Yes, it is something we don't really do at all nowadays.
Yeah, I think we talk about other things, but reviews are also quite important, and we actually love watching films and talking about them. I remember in 2020, still before the year has finished, there was this film announced, and I really wanted to watch it because I thought to myself, as I love sci-fi movies, you know, I love like this post-apocalyptic films in general, and maybe this is going to be one of my like top 10 films. You probably heard our previous episode, and this isn't. We're probably going to discuss why it isn't mine or Conor's favorite film of 2020. We're talking about Midnight Sky, directed by George Clooney, the film that premiered on Netflix during Christmas. This is a post-apocalyptic tale and that follows a lonely scientist in Arctic, yes, played by George Clooney, as he is trying to stop astronaut called Sally, played by Felicity Jones, and other astronauts that are returning from their long voyage to a different planet, and they're returning to Earth because something has happened on Earth. So we have essentially two movies in one, right? In this film, and half of the movie is taking place in this Arctic station with George Clooney, with a beard almost as big as Conor's, gray hair, and kind of fighting for his life, or essentially not fighting for his life, but he's almost on the edge of his existence because I think he's got cancer or something.
Yeah, they never actually explain.
They never say anything what it is.
He's using like a dialysis machine.
Yeah,
you know,
he's doing treatments there.
Yeah,
and the other story is that there is a spaceship coming back from one of the moons of Jupiter, from a very, very long kind of voyage, and they are coming back to Earth to share whatever they discovered over there. So something happens on Earth, and we can probably talk about like what is this sort of event that happens, because it's never actually it is. There is a funny scene in the film when George Clooney is like, I have to tell you that whatever happened was, and his microphone goes to static.
So stupid.
and like I think whatever kind of like this movie was trying to be, it never succeeds in like 100%, because it's trying to be this warning about what we do to the Earth, and it's trying to also be a little bit like kind of a hope for humanity, that there is always a way for us. It doesn't work as a spectacle in the spaceship, except for like one sequence that kind of reminded me of Deep Impact. And the whole thing that happens in Arctic, it's really good. I think I could watch more of that, you know, when you have George Clooney and the little partner he actually finds there, trying to get to the station to communicate with the astronauts. So it was really interesting to watch. Those two pieces of cinema didn't gel for me into one. That was the main problem. I kind of felt a little bit bored, as much as I love watching astronauts in space, and a bit of a letdown, to be honest. What were your thoughts, Conor?
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I was so bored in this movie, and I'm the same. Like, I love space movies, right? And like that sort of like sci-fi stuff. And you know, that can come in many forms, where you go like as far, you know, like to one side where you have like Star Wars, or you go to the other side where you have something like Interstellar, or, you know, even further than that, you can go to, you know, like 2001, for example, right? And it's
classic, yeah.
You know, it's like you can have this really like they're using space as like just a backdrop, but what's actually happening there is not really anything to do with space. And then you can have the other side where it's all about space, you know, and it's all about like the cool stuff. And this film just didn't care either way. Like, I just didn't really know what it wanted to do, because it felt like it was kind of tacked on to the part that to the other half of the movie, which is just George Clooney mostly in isolation in this Antarctic base. We kind of see at the start that he doesn't want to go off with the rest of humanity. I don't really know if are they leaving Earth at that point, or are they going somewhere else? You know,
that's a good question. Yeah,
because that's what I find. Yeah, it was like, you know, I feel like they want to leave so much of it vague, because they're trying to get to this whole like, you know, environmentalism, you know, like we're being bad to the earth and we need to stop it, or else we're going to end up in a situation like this. But it's like, I don't like, they go so far out of their way to avoid saying anything whatsoever, because I don't know if it just happens to be that he is like, you know, that him in the Arctic is being particularly bad, and like you could go down to the equator and it's like, yeah, we can only live in this little tiny stretch of land now, but we can live here fine, right? You know, you don't really get that at that sense of the movie or anything. It's just like, are they going just back to like, you know, like America, and he's staying behind to kind of monitor stuff, or what the hell's happening? Or are they leaving Earth altogether? And yeah, you have these two parts and they kind of are pulling in opposite directions, and I feel like committing to one of them would have been more interesting, and just saying like that we're telling the story and it's about George Clooney in sort of solitude, and he meets this girl, and it kind of gives him that last like push through life to ensure that she is saved, or, you know, something like that. I don't know, but we have like, it's then cut in with all of these kind of awkward flashbacks, which it feels like they're kind of like, they don't want to confirm that this is a young George Clooney, because like they kind of keep that for a reveal towards the end, but from the very start you're like, this is obviously a young George Clooney. This is him,
absolutely. Yeah, but I think the big kind of reveal in terms of like what's the correlation between those two in space and on Earth is kind of like, you know, it's there, and it's just like, why are you trying to tell me, like, show me like something secret? No, we know this like from the very first moment. So that's kind of like, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then in space, I don't feel like we got enough time with any of the people there for me to really care about what any of them were doing. They had a couple of like nice sequences. I didn't care all that much about the spacewalk. I seen the spacewalk coming about 20 minutes before there was a spacewalk. I was like, this feels like very soon we're going to have a part where we're going to have to go out and fix something on the outside of the ship, and something's going to go wrong. And sure enough, they got to go out and fix it, and something goes wrong. And it's pretty graphic. It's pretty like, you know, it's pretty like out there. Nothing too like violent in terms of like, you know, like we don't see any like major violence, but the incident itself isn't pleasant. But I also feel like it showed me nothing new that we haven't seen done in a sort of like space sci-fi movie before, like, you know, with like
it's not gravity,
the clots of blood like in the air. I'm like, I feel like I've seen this 100 times before. Not really that impressed. What I did like about it, and I have to give credit to this, I thought this was pretty cool, was whoever the set designer was for this had come up with like a vision of not too distant future where so much of our infrastructure has been like 3D printed. You'll notice it in both the space station and in the actual spaceship itself. So in George Clooney's, there is like equipment that has got this sort of like it's almost like a woven texture to it. It's like almost like a symbiote that has like frozen solid. And then we also see it on parts of the spaceship as well. Like it makes up the actual structure of the ship. And I think that's a really cool, like, that feels like one of those things that in, 20 years time, we'll look back and be like, they really nailed that. Like, a lot of what we have around us is manufactured from 3D printing of some description. I thought that was a pretty cool sort of like forward thinking, like what will the world look like, and what will our production and stuff look like in however many years after in the future that this is set. But ultimately, I just didn't care very much about anything that was happening in this movie. I didn't I feel like I could see all of the plot points coming a mile away. Yeah. And I fail to care about really any of them. I feel like the one part that I kind of cared was when the two guys were kind of said they wanted to go back to Earth. They had a kind of monologue, or like a conversation between them, and Chandler Reese, I think is his name. Kyle Chandler, I think is the actor.
Yes, Kyle Chandler, yeah,
from Friday Night Lights. I really like him, and they have such a great conversation between them about kind of just like what they feel their purpose is, why they're doing what they're doing, and it isn't really like big space adventures or anything. And it felt a little bit more grounded, and I quite liked that conversation that happened between them. And I just didn't care about anything else,
Yeah, I think. Yeah, this is a kind of I wouldn't say it's a big failure, but it's a movie that maybe it's not new. It failed to deliver whatever the buzz was about, like before it was released, because it was like, a George Clooney movie, and he's not a bad director. He made a good film before, but he's not the skillest director of them all. So that's the only other thing I probably would say. George, maybe just wanna play. Just don't direct this one. Maybe a more skilled director would do something better out of it. I agree. Beautiful cinematography, great production design, really good music as well by Alexandre Desplat in that film. But I don't think this is going to be the one film that it will stay with us for a long time. It's called The Midnight Sky. Give it a go if you really like sci-fi and maybe look for some ambitious stuff. Again, and not the best of them all, to be honest. But if we're talking about the best films, we wanted to add something.
No, I wasn't. I was laughing at the transition to. I thought we were talking about best movies, or are we about?
We are talking about good films as well. So we're still in 2020, Conor, because we've not reviewed a single movie yet that was released in 2021.
Yeah,
I don't know whose fault is that, because before Christmas, I managed to go to the cinema, and you did as well, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I need to tell you that story. I think I texted you like the picture of the ticket I got. And just before Christmas, London was in the situation when all the cinemas were closed. But just outside, if you go just outside London, there was few cinemas still open. So we took a car, we drove to that cinema like 30 minutes, I think. So it wasn't that bad. And we went to watch Wonder Woman 1984. And I tell you what, Conor, I was never so happy to get a very last ticket to the screening that was essentially sold out. Yeah. Because apparently, like, people really want to watch movies, and that kind of gave me so much joy that people from like inside London, they went to this like small city, like a suburban city just outside London, to watch a movie because there was a new big movie coming out. And what a movie that was. Patty Jenkins' new film about Wonder Woman.
This world is not yet ready for all that you will do. Your time will come, Diana. And everything will be different.
citizens of the world.
I'm here to change your life.
Anything you want. Anything you dream of, you can have it.
You look like you saw a ghost. Diana, look at you. It's like not one day has passed.
I don't want to be like anyone. I want to be an apex predator.
You've always had everything, while people like me have had nothing.
I need to tell you, like, I was moved to tears when this movie started, and the first scene kicked in, and we saw young Wonder Woman competing in this Olympics on the island, and it is such a marvelous sequence. It got everything that I wanted from this film. Beautiful cinematography is just like crazy over the top, panoramic shots, big scenes, swooping music, and a bit of drama, a bit of humor in there. Essentially, a beautiful opening to great film. Are you with me?
No, I'm not. This movie fucking sucked, Rado. You're out of your fucking mind. I don't even know if you're fucking talking shit right now.
No. This I want to have a discussion with you because I feel your anger here, and I want to understand why. And what did you expect from the film that is set in 1984? Is meant to be colorful. Is meant to be a comic book movie with ridiculous ideas, ridiculous characters. What did you expect?
Yeah, I expected a good movie. That's what I expected, and I did not get
Define the good movie.
All right. Now, I want to, if you go back and listen to the previous episodes through last year when we mentioned this movie, we mentioned the trailer, I was always like throwing cold water over this, right? I always said, I don't know, people seem really into this trailer. You were really into this trailer. And I was like, this sucks. This really, really sucks. And a lot of like other like film people that I see or listen to, were the same. They were like, this trailer looks so cool, and like she's like riding the lightning and everything. I'm like, this looks really bad. I just don't think it.
This looks great.
It looks so bad. And one of my initial sort of thoughts on it were, this feels like DC said, oh, look at what they did with Thor. Right? They took Thor from being this kind of like demigod, and they put him in a situation that was like sort of 80s inspired through its sort of like colors and the music and things like that. And we got Taika Waititi to direct it, and it turned out to be a lot of fun, and audiences, not only did audiences really like it, but it also made them really like Thor, and it completely changed Thor's direction in the rest of the Marvel movies. What if we do that with Wonder Woman? That's what it felt like this movie wanted to do. Let's like make it a lot more comical, right? Let's make it a lot more goofy. Let's set it in the 80s. Why not? We'll go the whole way. We'll not just kind of like pay homage to 80s things. We're going to go the whole way and actually put it in the 80s. And it never ever felt like it succeeded on any of those grounds at all. So it didn't. The best part of this movie in terms of it being kind of like its tone, which I feel like is all over the place, but the tone that I felt like they wanted to get the most was pretty much any scene where Chris Pine was just goofing around. All right, because Chris Pine has that kind of charisma and feels like you would have him in he could play, like he could be in a Tango and Cash, right? And it would totally make sense. You're like, he just has that charisma around him. And Gal Gadot, I think she is an amazing Wonder Woman, but and she's so in a similar way to like Chris Hemsworth is. Do you know, like you see Chris Hemsworth as Thor, you're like, they really like cast this so perfectly, right? In terms of like how he looks and the kind of like regalness of him and everything. Like they really, really got this casting perfect. And you can say the same with Gal Gadot with Wonder Woman. They just killed it. Really, really, really great casting. But she does not have the comedic range to be kind of even charismatic. She's so straight-laced and serious the whole time. Even when she's kind of doing then like weird like winks at people in the movie, like when she winks to the little girl, it's like this feels weird. It feels like you were uncomfortable filming this. Whereas Chris Pine, it's like, this is just water off a duck's back. He's just so natural in this position. He's basically just playing Captain Kirk right now, you know, and like, you know, plucked out of one universe and plopped into another and be like, you're a fish in water, what's it like, huh? You know, and it's like and I do think that them together is the strongest part of the whole movie. You know, like their sort of that thread that they run with him in terms of like her kind of having to bring him back and not wanting to get over him or let him go, and that decision that she has to make is probably the strongest part in the whole movie, alongside Pedro Pascal going just fucking balls to the wall with his character. But the rest of it, actually no, I'll give Kristen Wiig, I think, was actually pretty good as well when she was playing the Kristen Wiig, as in like when she was just the normal person. I forget the character's name, but you know,
Barbara. It's Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara. Thank you. And you know what? My second favorite scene in the movie, or one, like, you know, I'd say my two favorite scenes are when, and this is spoilers if you haven't seen it, if you're super worried about it, but they're not massive spoilers, is when Chris Pine and Gal Gadot have to say goodbye to each other on one hand, and then on the other hand is the sequence where Barbara meets the kind of drunk after she has kind of gained her powers, right? And she has that turn, and the movie at that point feels so tense. It feels so right. It's like, oh, she's like getting this kind of flex her acting chops here, and you can really see what she's putting down, and you're believing it. You're really believing it. You're like, I just leave her be this character for the rest of the movie. Just maybe make it go darker and darker. She gets more and more twisted, but this is what I want. And then they're like, do you know what would be good if we made her an actual cheetah, like the comics? And they're like, no, please don't do it. You don't need to do it. It doesn't need to happen. Like, I think let's do it. And you're like, fuck. Why? Fuck. This, I was so, while I was down on this movie, I'm finishing my rant soon. While I was down on this movie, I have to say that I was excited to be going back to the cinema. And I was so hopeful that like this, please finish out the year with like the last thing that I'm going to see in the cinema in 2020. And please, like, it looks like it could be fun. I'm open to let this being good. And as soon as it starts in Themyscira at the kind of like Olympic Games, and you have grown women like with a child, not a teenager, not like a young, you know, her in her young 20s, a child, and I was like, no, fuck this movie, I'm already like this. And she goes down the wee slide and stuff. I was like, no, fuck this movie sucks already. This is terrible.
Oh God, Connor, I think you just talking about the best sequence of the movie that essentially almost brought me to tears. The sequence, and you talking this was rubbish.
Yeah, garbage. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the Chris Pine moment. No, the opening sequence was terrible.
It was fantastic.
It wasn't. It was so weird looking, and she was like, "Why are you here?" Right? Like, you know, all of this was to get to the point where she gets told, "You must never tell lies." And you're like, we needed all of this to get to the point of the movie at the start, which is don't tell lies. Lies are bad. That is the premise of the movie, and we get introduced to that by is it Robin Wright, I think, and you know, and she doesn't even like say that. She has like a full speech that she gives her, but really the only thing of importance that she needed to say was, no, you must, like, the truth is the most important thing, right? Don't be a liar. Real bad if you tell lies. It won't work out well for you or anybody. And like we had this whole big stupid sequence. And it just was like, I don't like, why? There's so many better ways.
No. This sequence is really fantastic. I think it's a great opening to the film. First of all, you want this is a blockbuster. You want a blockbuster to open this way, to show you a world you've not seen. So it doesn't start in 1984. It starts somewhere else, on a different place, in a magical land where women are, you know, doing this all kind of Olympic game or whatever that was. It doesn't make sense because she's a young girl competing, but it doesn't have to. It's a fucking comic book movie. Connor, how many fucking times you gonna be telling me this is? I require a little bit more credibility from that. No, I don't give a crap. This looks amazing, and I'm like, I know what movie I'm watching. This movie is silly. This movie is kind of like beating you over the head with what it's trying to say, but it's a loud and beautiful spectacle, and this is what you get.
No,
I think there's two types of movie that are going to watch, two types of viewers that are going to watch this film, and this is going to be either you or me, right? So they're going to react saying, "Oh, stay away," or they're going to say, "Wow, fucking loving it."
Yeah.
And I think depending on which side you're on, you're gonna either like this film or give it a chance. Even there are few more things wrong about this film than you said, but they're gonna go with it and they're gonna enjoy it. Or they're gonna be people like you saying, "But Marvel did it better. Marvel did it this way."
Yeah, but
like,
that's what I'm saying.
I don't give a shit. I'm not watching Marvel. This is a different film, and we know, like, however crazy.
That's my point. Right, is that they're trying to, like, it feels so much like they wanted to have a Ragnarok. Like they were like, let's take that model and copy it, right? Because it just fits in so many ways, you know. But they were like, let's go all the way and make it in the 80s, right? And then we can kind of pay homage to like the old Wonder Woman TV show and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, but nobody really watched it anyway, so who you paying homage to? And anyway, like it's just tonally, like I think if you take all of the kind of comic stuff away, I think tonally this movie is all over the place. It does not know at any point what it wants to be. It feels like none of the actors had any real idea about what the direction should have been for the movie. And I don't think that's necessarily Patty Jenkins' fault. I think that a lot of that is hung on the fact that the script is terrible. You probably couldn't tell me right now what Pedro Pascal's character was actually trying to achieve. Because I have no fucking idea. I watched 2.5 hours of the movie.
Idea.
I have no fucking idea what he was trying to do in that movie.
He tried to be powerful. He tried to be the baddie. However, you know,
did he though?
How he kind of come up with this idea of becoming whatever he become is just like, okay, I don't really understand it. I think that you're absolutely right. You know, there are few things about this film that they don't work, and if we start digging into them, we're gonna be here all night. And I don't
like Gal Gadot rapes someone. How about that?
Oh yeah, like this,
like,
for example,
Wonder Woman, like that. Because that like how that script made it through probably multiple revisions, and nobody went, "This is really fucking weird. This is really
it's
bad."
Creepy.
It's very, very creepy. And like then they have the scenes that they reshot at the very end. They kind of like, because it's coming out of Christmas, we need to do a sort of winter scene. And they like, let's bring this guy back into it. The guy that we like insulted throughout the movie for like not being in shape. The guy that we like, you know, he like ate all the shit in his house and like probably like shit all over his toilet and everything and just like left it there. You know, like, you know, and what was the other part of it? Wonder Woman has her own apartment. Why did they need to be in this man's apartment for any of this movie? Like,
just to actually go there and get some clothes, you know?
It doesn't make any sense, right? And oh my god! And then yeah, like I feel like the strong threads that this could have pulled on, which was absolutely should have been all in on Kristen Wiig as Barbara, and they should all in by I mean that they should have just let her do what she was doing so well, because it was working. It was when she was there and she was at that kind of like middle stages, it was working. But instead we go to the Middle East where we turn some people, we need to just get some like, you know, like Middle Eastern people that we can like beat up and make into sort of like kind of villains for a short period of time. No problem. Let's just make up a plot point that's happening in the Middle East. Completely pointless. There's absolutely no reason for it to be in the movie, but they do it anyway.
There is no villains coming from Middle East. That's the only problem I've got with this. They go to Egypt just to kind of shoot it like in a very exotic scenery, essentially, because nothing comes from there except for there is a big wall right now around this city, and this is the wish that he kind of like wanted. And also it's a way of showing how Gal Gadot, former Israeli soldier, is saving kids in Egypt, which is another undertone, that it's kind of problematic with this film.
Yeah,
apart from the fact,
before I get myself into trouble with that.
apart from the fact that Wonder Woman, she's such a powerful character, and she needs a man to fulfill her destiny. Like, what?
I'm glad that you're coming around to my side here, Rado, as you just unravel this.
I am not saying this movie is perfect. I'm not saying this movie is like the masterpiece. However, I had such a good time with this film, and I don't know. I think when you sometimes go to the film festival, you watch a film outside of anything that's happening. No one's seen it. You've not read any reviews, and it felt like this for me. It felt like just I'm here with this movie. I'm for this movie. I'm going to give it much more credit than it deserves. I think any other year, I probably would be more on your side, but I want to defend this film because, first of all, it was a cinema experience. Now this movie is available to buy on VOD. It's a great spectacle. It doesn't kind of, deliver towards the end. I think I agree with you, like the cheetah should have not become a cheetah. She was already fantastic character. Barbara was amazing before she actually got some fur on her. And I don't really kind of get why Pedro Pascal is what he's doing. Why is he doing it? And just like, I don't know. But it was a spectacle fun to watch. It was uplifting, moving, beautiful. The flying sequence of her, not in the plane, but actually just flying on her own, was also incredible. I loved it and just moved me. And this is my gut talking.
She was falling with style. It's a reference for me.
So, anything to add? Anything nice to add about Wonder Woman 1984?
No, I think I think that the parts that worked really well, and I wish that the movie they had realized this as they were making it and lent more into them, because the chemistry that they have in the first movie carries across here and is even stronger in this movie between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. They are so much fun to watch together. And Barbara is a lot of fun, and Pedro Pascal is a lot of fun. Like, I feel like you can have those four characters pretty much get up to some form of plot that makes some sort of sense, and just lean into the fact that you want it to be like a silly, goofy kind of movie, because it feels like it wants to do that, and then the next thing it wants to be like super heroic, and then the next thing it wants to be really dark and twisted, and you're like, make up your fucking mind, please. So I think that the stuff that works really well, and I just wish that they had have went more in that direction, because I feel like we would have came away with a much better movie, and it could have been shorter, and I think people would have enjoyed it a lot more as well, ultimately. So yeah, I was I want to say disappointed. My expectations were tepid to begin with, but I was hopeful. I was full of hope going into it. And then just to sort of salt in the wounds, Rado, that I'm probably going to butcher this, but when the projector and the lens aren't really sitting kind of properly in a cinema, they're not aligned properly, you get a sort of chromatic aberration where the edges of things have a blue and a red glow to them, almost like it's 3D. To the point where I was watching sequences in this movie, and I was at the start of it, in Themyscira, I was like, have we came to a 3D version? Is there a 3D version of this movie? And we accidentally booked tickets, and no one give us glasses on the way in. And I was like, no, it can't be. So half of the movie for me was sort of out of focus on top of everything. I was like, and because it's trying to be so bright and colorful, I couldn't tell if it was meant to be a deliberate choice. Parts of it I thought, is it a 3D movie? And then I thought, okay, it's not 3D, I'm sure of that. And then I thought, okay, well maybe because 3D was kind of big in the 80s, right? I was kind of, they were kind of dipping their toe into it and trying to make it a thing with the red and the blue and stuff. And I was like, maybe they're sort of paying a little bit of homage to that. But I went and looked it up afterwards, and it turns out it was just this projector was just shit in the cinema that I went
That's
to.
that's the cinema's fault then. I agree.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I despite all the problems there are with this film, and I see these problems, I had a great fun watching it.
Letterboxd.
5 stars it is for Wonder Woman 1984.
Popular.
Conor,
this week.
you give 1
There it
star.
is.
I give 5. I think we're gonna just meet somewhere in the middle.
This currently has a rating of 2.5 stars on Letterboxd.
Yeah, I gave it 4.5.
I honestly
I think
feel
I
like should-
exaggerated a little bit, but yeah.
I feel like I want to give it 2, so I guess we're gonna have to kind of land at 2.5,
Or maybe
as well?
3.
No, I'm definitely not going as high as 3. Not a chance.
So I challenge you to a duel, and we're gonna run through a field. We're gonna shoot an arrow, and whoever wins is gonna get their rating. Because you're giving it 2.5 because other people gave it 2.5, and you don't.
No,
have
I'm
to
giving
be,
it. No,
we
I'm
don't
saying I'm
have
giving
to
it
be like
2.
to other people.
I'm giving it 2, but you're giving
And
it
you're being
4.5.
generous, and
Yeah, I am being
giving
generous.
I'm giving it 4 stars. So there you go. Half. It's free. That's.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I'm being
Between
generous
2
giving you
and
the half
4.
here.
No. Between 2 and a 4, you're giving it 2. I'm giving it 4. The average is 3, and this is our score. This is what it should reflect. Our average score of this film. And then you can say, Conor hated this film, 2 stars. Rado loved this film much more than Conor, 4 stars.
Fine. I'll go just on the simple basis of maths and it being the average.
You can't beat maths, Conor.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm too logical like that. 3 stars. Fucking shit movie.
So that was Wonder Woman 1984. I think this is the very first discussion we had that we really didn't agree on many things on this. But hopefully there will be more films like that. I'm looking forward to 2021. You can watch Wonder Woman 1984 if you want to on VOD, purchase it, rent it in glorious 4K.
If you want to.
Yeah, if you want to. Because maybe you don't want to watch that. And that's fine. But don't listen only to Conor. Maybe it's a movie for you. Who knows? Okay, Conor, let's move on with this 5-hour show. That's almost gonna be as long as Wonder Woman 1984. And talk The Mandalorian. So, Series 2, Episodes 7 or 8, or Chapters 14 and 15 have been delivered before Christmas. So,
yes,
that was a very, very big the end of the series. We saw 2 episodes. One was called The Believer, and directed by Rick Famuyiwa. Hopefully, I don't butcher his name. And then in this episode, we had our team spearheaded by Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Cara Dune, going to find an old enemy from Series 1 called Mayfield. That's going to help them get to Empire's secret. What did you think about this episode, Conor? If you still remember it.
Yeah, no, I do. I remember thinking that it was the sort of like weaker out of that run of episodes that we had. This one felt like a little bit of a dip, but I also really liked it at the same time. Because I think we got a lot of like interesting character development from Mando himself and from Bill Burr's character even as well, who you would assume, even just watching him in the first season, like you kind of assume like he's never coming back, and if he is, it's going to just be like a cameo, like a smaller appearance. You know, we'll see him in a prison cell or something like that there. So to not only like have him come back, but to kind of give his character a little bit of a resolution, a little bit of growth was really, really interesting. I really liked it. So I think this was definitely, it felt like it was just taking that little bit of a lull before it got to the finale, where I don't even want to say it slows down, because it doesn't necessarily slow down. It's still quite a fast-paced episode, but it just, compared to the ones that came prior to it, it felt like you're just getting a little bit more of a, insight into the Mandalorian himself, because this is the one where we see him like willingly take off his helmet sort of for the first time. Right?
It's a big scene there from Mando himself, and that's actually in this episode we saw who's playing Mandalorian, and that's not like someone else, but we actually see Pedro Pascal in there. But there's a couple of things that I really enjoyed. First one was we see inside Boba Fett's ship and how the kind of there is this capsule inside because the ship is flat on its back almost, and then it kind of raises up. And how does it work that people sit there, and how do they move? I found this super interesting, just to see the mechanism inside the ship. Second one was to see for the very there's a very few times in official Star Wars canon when we see from the perspective of the Starship Troopers from
Stormtroopers.
Stormtroopers, whatever. You see how geeky I am.
Yeah, from the Empire's point of view. Almost.
Yeah, but not only Empire, but from the troops on the ground.
Yes.
When you have those two guys driving this truck, and they are being stopped in a tunnel, and they being replaced by our two protagonists, by Mando and by Mayfield, and they essentially becoming stormtroopers in there, right? And you want them. They are being attacked also, like we see other transport lorries being destroyed, and you want them actually to succeed. And this is the very kind of unique way of looking at it. As like, wow, okay, we're seeing the Empire here, like how they operate, what they do, and when they actually succeed, they get high fives in the hangar when they arrive, and you feel like, wow, that's a great team. And it's like you've never seen this, essentially, like the troopers just like, wow, okay, these guys made it. Obviously, this is very quickly going to be replaced by the hatred, because what's happening in the canteen, the talk they have with the guy, and then there's a shootout. But also agree, fantastic scene when Pedro actually decides, okay, my fate in whatever I'm kind of believing is not as important as the child, and he removes the helmet. And that was a big kind of sequence there. So you said you obviously were looking forward, like everyone else, towards the finale. I think it was a stop towards the finale. That was the rescue, directed by Peyton Reed. And this is where Mandalorian and the crew go full on the ship. That's Moff Gideon's ship, played by Giancarlo Esposito of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul fame, by the way.
He is indeed. He plays the CM character as well. He's just in space now.
We're gonna probably drop in some spoilers, so hopefully you watch that. But if not, check the show notes, because I will clearly mark when we're gonna stop talking about the Mandalorian and move to a next thing. So what we see in this episode, we see a couple of fights, and big fights. You probably said that before. We predicted that Mando's gonna be fighting Moff Gideon, and Mando's gonna be using the spear from the Beskar steel, and that Moff is gonna be using what is the black or dark saber, right? Dark saber.
Yep.
And kind of interesting dynamics between Mando and Bo-Katan, because Mando doesn't want to have anything to do with the rest of the people that are right now led by Bo-Katan, and Bo-Katan really wants to get the Darksaber, because that's an important symbol of her actually ruling Mandalorian and the Mandalore. But other thing happened in this episode. Connor, what do you remember?
I think first of all, like, we'll dial back a bit before we get to like the the grand finale. Anyway, they come in the ship, but it's like kind of like the sort of like female hit squad coming in, right? You've got like Cara Dune, you've got Fennec, and you've got the two Mandalorian, and they're just like fucking cleaning house. So they're just fucking everybody up. And it's such a cool sequence to see like the four of them, because you have like the kind of different like fighting styles from them as well, and then you can see with the two Mandalorians like how in sync they are with like all of their movements. Like they are completely as a unit, as a team, whereas the other two are a little rougher around the edges because they're kind of there on their own in a weird way, but yet kind of the combo of all four of them just decimates their way through the ship. So that starts as awesome, like an awesome sequence. And then we obviously see a really cool fight sequence with the Dark Troopers and Mando. It's just him kind of fighting one of them, and like you get that amazing sequence because they're just complete droids, and you get that sequence of it like punching his helmet as it like smashes into the side of the ship, and it's like that like his Beskar steel is protecting him, but at the same time you're like, that looks like it's gonna hurt real bad.
Definitely got rattled in there in that helmet.
And it does such a good it pays off so well too, because we see how much he struggles against just one of them. Like it very nearly takes him to the wire, right? Like he really does struggle with it, and sure enough, his Beskar kind of like his Beskar steals triumphs here with the spear. But you're like, it would be an impossible task for him to fight any more of them, and the rest of them are all like trying to get to him at that time, and then they kind of all return at a later stage. So it sets up really well, first of all, that they are like an absolute force to be reckoned with, and they will kill everybody on the ship. Then we get the sort of fight sequence between Mando and
Moff Gideon.
Moff Gideon, thank you. And that sequence was amazing as well, because we have the Darksaber and the Beskar, and like how they like when they strike and the blade heats the spear and it starts to go like red hot in the middle. Or like how he didn't quite foresee that like his gauntlets could be used to block the sword as well. Just such they've built this up over the course of this series, right? Like we've seen the Darksaber, we kind of know that it's powerful, we know that lightsabers are powerful, we know how they work, and then we have seen how earlier on with Beskar that it can stop lightsabers with Ahsoka Tano, and then now we're getting the kind of payoff of all of that. And then we go into the kind of final room, and that's when the Dark Troopers come back, right? And
that was a weird thing, and I kind of didn't like it, because at some point Mando releases them, right, to the
he does.
to go
like an air shoot,
to space, and they don't come back straight away, because obviously why would they? Like they could have easily just come back straight away. No, they just wait a specific amount of time until he gets to he beats one of them, and he gets to the cockpit, and then they have a chat. Only then they it was just like kind of lousy writing for me, but that's fine, because then we see X-Wing arriving. Because what we know is essentially the team awaiting the Dark Troopers to smash them to pieces, because they are just coming strong. They just waiting for the death, but obviously that's not gonna happen. Spoiler.
So I agree. I think that like they would have been better just leaving the oh my god, Dark Troopers like just stuck in a room and have them like attempt to get out, and I kind of would have put a little bit of time pressure on, right? Like we got to get this done and we got to get out of here, because they're only going to stay in that room for so long, like as opposed to let's release them out into space and have them come back. So I am in agreement. That felt kind of like, really, like they're going to fly back. But anyway, the reason that they return is because we had that set up before of how powerful they were. And like, okay, Giancarlo Esposito, Moff Gideon says like they're going to break in here and they're going to kill everyone in this room except me. Okay, so like they've set the stakes really high here, and you are like, there's no way that this could win. And then we get that lone X-wing, and Cara Dune says, "Oh great, a single X-wing," and you're like, "Oh my fucking god, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me?" And they do it in a kind of clever way, like they tease it out where they're showing it through the CCTV footage, so you're never quite sure. You just see a Jedi get out, and he just fucking wrecks havoc. He just destroys, or she, or they just fucking destroy everything in sight, and they are so fucking powerful. And like, that's it. You had this build up. Look how difficult these things are to beat. And then this Jedi is just annihilating them one by one. And we eventually then we get the black glove as the kind of final confirmation, and you just see Luke motherfucking Skywalker in his prime, and he is just beating the fuck out of these things for sport, and it is fucking amazing. I audibly screamed when I watched the sequence.
I bet you did. I think this is great reveal as well, like how it's obviously it's doesn't have anything to do with being realistic. I think still being a Jedi is great. You have a force and you can kind of perceive some things and whatever, but he doesn't see a fucking thing in this hood. He still is, great and, fighting. I agree with you. You see his force, and you see how similar that sequence is to
Rogue One.
When
Vader.
Darth Vader slices through the troops, the rebellion troops. And you see that this is essentially like the dark side of Luke, that he's always had this dark side, not always where we talked about it. And I think in the last Jedi, there was probably the biggest glimpses you had of his kind of dark side. There, but the reveal, also the green lightsaber, kind of tell you a little bit who's coming, and then you have a little old friend appearing there, R2D2. So that was also the moment where I was like, okay, that's fucking incredible. And I think there will be less people saying, oh my god, that they should have maybe get someone else to rescue, but this makes sense. This absolutely makes sense to the story. It kind of is interesting when you kind of look about what's going to happen to Grogu, and because we know from the trilogy, the last trilogy, that something happens in Luke's school. One of his pupils sets fire and kills everyone. So
yes,
like, what's the story of, like, what's gonna happen with Grogu? And also, like, it was kind of like very moving to see Grogu and Mando saying goodbye when he takes off the mask, the helmet. But it's gonna be a different show, do you think, without Grogu? Or is it gonna be one of those shows when they're like, oh, I'm going to go on an adventure, but the adventure finishes and he goes off to see what's happening with Grogu and, like, hangs out with him for 5 minutes. Then he's going to be called again to another adventure. I don't know what's the story of Mandalorian going forward. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah, I think kind of having a look at what they're, that sort of like forward projection for Disney Plus that they talked about at their investor day. So this is the first thing I think I mentioned before. This is the first, like, are we going to get like post-credit scenes in the TV shows, and the Marvel TV shows whenever they started to come out? And sure enough, like the Mandalorian kind of delivers a post-credit scene with the book of Boba Fett. Right, and it's sort of how they've been setting it up, where like this is kind of been like the book of, is it like Din Yara or something like that? His name is, I can't remember. The book of Din, essentially, right? So like, is this like kind of putting the sort of closing that book, and is now opening the next sort of sequence, which will then be our maybe a single series about Boba Fett, 8-9 episodes, or maybe even a little bit less. And then after that, will we go with Bo-Katan? Like, are we going to move to like the Book of Bo-Katan, right? And have more about her. And this way, then they can keep bringing these characters back and telling interesting stories, but we don't find ourselves on season 9 of The Mandalorian and we're like, please stop, right? Like, so this seems to be like they're kind of having a bit of a wiser approach here to saying there's lots that we can play with here, and we can introduce characters and we can weave them in and out, and if we do the Book of Bo-Katan, there's nothing to say that we don't have an episode where she runs into the Mandalorian and he has Grogu with him again, and then like we revisit that at another point as to how they kind of got reunited or something like that. So I don't know, there's a lot of different paths that they can take with it. I kind of do commend them, because getting rid of Grogu is a risky decision to make, right? Because number one, toy sales, and number two, they definitely like brings an audience. Like, he has captivated an entire audience of people who would have otherwise never watched anything Star Wars related. So I think it's been a risky move to say goodbye to him, but I definitely don't think that this is the last we're see of them. But no real confirmation set in stone, I think, as to what they're doing next.
Yeah, fantastic. I think this whole series kind of grew and grew and grew from the episode 1 and 2, and we were like, okay, that's fine, it's more like previous series, to episodes 7 and 8, and even previous episodes were like getting better and better and better. So that was like a big surprise. I think this is quality delivered by Disney Plus, and this was your TV show of 2020 number 2. So pretty good stuff. I'm looking forward to see what's coming next from the Star Wars universe. I don't want to be having like a show every 2 weeks, but this anticipation of something good coming, absolutely yes.
Yep. No, I mean, like we're going to what, Diego Luna, Cassian Andor next, I think, right? That's in the middle of this year at some point. We're gonna get the kind of premiere of that, and like that actually has potential to line up with this a little bit, because it's not too far in sort of like before the what we see in The Mandalorian. So there is potential for some characters to maybe overlap and to line up again, or for it to introduce characters who then appear again in The Mandalorian season 4 or season 3. Sorry, like this just, again, they're playing in that universe, and kind of going back to what I said at the start, like the universe is what holds the kind of secret here. It's the secret sauce, and what they need to do is lean into, and we're about to talk about this in a little bit, is lean into like the weird and wonderful ideas that can happen within the universe, because the universe is why we come back, but it's the stories that you can tell like keep us wanting more and more and more. All right.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this is Mandalorian Series 2 and 1, available right now on Disney Plus, and there is also a beautiful. This time is much shorter. The kind of making of Mandalorian. There's not like 10 episodes. There's I think it's about 1 hour, but it's also fantastic insight on this second season and how the things were done and who kind of were involved there and so on. So if you enjoyed Mandalorian, please look it up as well on Disney Plus. So now let's move on to one last thing, which is another TV show on Disney Plus that Conor was literally like pissing his pants to watch. The moment it dropped on Disney Plus, like 1 minute past midnight, he actually opened and watched it. No, he didn't. He actually waited.
No, he couldn't. I tried. I looked.
It wasn't there.
Wasn't there until like the next morning, and then I was like, that was weird.
Bastards. Yeah. We're talking about the WandaVision, and this is the MCU finally having its TV show, not the film, but 6 episodes. Is that correct, Conor?
No, 9.
9?
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. So we got the first 2 episodes on the day of the release, and what a surprise. Wanda Maximoff and Vision are on the screen in black and white, and they are in a fucking sitcom. What the fuck is happening? Connor, Jesus Christ, what is this? They were meant to be shootings, flying, saving the Earth, and fighting space and aliens. And those motherfuckers are just sitting in the room, black and white, and just like the audience laughs out loud. And what am I watching? What is this?
So what's a single gal like you doing rattling around this big house?
Well, I assure you, I'm married to a man, a human one.
Wanda.
What's it ring? And I ran while you sleep out the night.
We are an unusual couple.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
We just don't know what to expect.
Explain.
So-
Explain.
Yeah, like this is what I think is working really well for this show so far in these 2 episodes, is that they completely have committed to the style. And that, you know, we've seen trailers and they've, you know, kind of let us peek a little bit into what's actually happening and kind of released tidbits to kind of lay down breadcrumbs so that we at least have an idea of what to expect. Like, I feel like they set the expectations just right for the show, where they're like, they've, you know, repeatedly said like, oh, it's not what you, it's, you know, it's not like anything that you've seen from the MCU before, right? Like, you know, like Kevin Feige himself, I think, said that. Like, it's not anything like you've seen before. So I think that they set the expectations just right, that, you know, because I feel like if they hadn't if they were just like, oh, it's a mystery show called WandaVision, it's WandaVision, and then you go in and the first episode is 4:3 black and white and mono audio, you're like, what the fuck is going on? But they don't. We know to expect, like, oh, okay, from the trailers, each episode, or, you know, the show looks like it's going to be moving through different sitcoms throughout the year. So this one's starting sort of in the 50s, episode 2 being kind of in the 60s, sort of like leaning into Bewitched, with like the kind of opening done like Bewitched.
Yeah.
And we know that like they go right through to the 2000s with an episode based on The Office, which we haven't seen anything yet, but I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, I don't know how much of it, like, it just that's like one tiny bit that they've said, like, you know, like kind of in the we're openly
Mockumentary,
about,
right? Mockumentary
sort of,
style. Yeah. Like This Country. Yeah.
And yeah, I think what the reason why for me with these 2 episodes this has worked really, really well has been that they have fully committed to the style of each generation and each show. And they've taken so many like kind of cues from those shows themselves, going as far as the first episode was filmed in front of a live audience. So
yeah.
Which is really cool, right? Because then you get that kind of like laugh track in there as well, of the audience like, laughing in real time to those sort of silly comedy moments that suit the era as well. Like the jokes that they're making very much suit the time that they're coming from, and I think both the actors are doing such a brilliant job of it. But why this works is there are these moments where the seams start to break a little bit, just hints here and there where things aren't adding up right, and I feel like they only work, and those sequences only carry any sort of impact because the rest of the show is so willing to go ahead and commit to the kind of wacky style that it's leaning into, right? Because if the show had have kind of half-assed done a sort of 50s sitcom, and then you got these sort of moments where the sort of walls were kind of cracking, you wouldn't really buy it as much, I feel like. But because it's so committed to it, in the first episode, for example, that's a spoiler if you don't want to listen, where he's choking at the table, the guy is choking at the table, the mum from That 70s Show just keeps like kind of repeating the same phrase over and over again, and it's getting kind of closer to her face every time it does it. And Vision is just sort of stuck. He has no idea what's going on, and Wanda is kind of in a panic, and then she almost instructs Vision to save him. Like, she tells him, like, you know, help him. And it's such a small, like, it feels so uncomfortable. The whole sequence feels so uncomfortable compared to the rest of the show. Yeah. And it's just given that little bit of like, oh, not everything is really what it seems to be. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to not only seeing how far they go with this through each of the other episodes, but also this is all of the stuff that they've told us so far. So there's like multiple levels. There's the stuff that they've told us. There's the stuff that they know people are going to pick apart based on like comics and things like that have existed in the past that the story's kind of being based on. And also then there's going to be another level, which is that you didn't really see this coming though, did you? Where we add in something completely wild that you never seen. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out here about mutants for the first time in the MCU, because like as we know, Disney acquired Fox, so we can now officially have mutants in this universe. We haven't had them yet in a real sense. Wanda is a mutant, but they just refer to her as an enhanced, where she was kind of worked on by Strucker, who gets a little bit of a shout out in the second episode if you picked up on that with the watch. Yeah. So, are we going to get now for the first time, like they go back and reveal sort of like origin plot points or whatever for Wanda, and we can now officially refer to them as mutants? There's all sorts of avenues that they can go down that I think would completely catch people by surprise. So I'm looking forward to that, like, the multiple tiers of this, like, where's the show going to go, because it's fun to watch. What are the parts that they're going to reveal that we were able to kind of guess or people were able to know about based on existing material? And then the third, like, kind of final layer is like, gotcha, right? Didn't see this happening. Look who it is. We have Henry Cavill with a mustache playing Superman. We did it.
Yeah, and Wonder Woman comes to rescue.
Yeah, I was about to say, in this universe, Wonder Woman 84 is good.
So it's the same universe anyway. I have to say, I kind of knew what I'm going for when I started watching it. Didn't watch the whole trailer, just bits and bobs, and I know the characters more or less from the movies. But my girlfriend was like, until the moment we started watching it, she was like, she didn't know what is this, what the title means, who are those people. And she enjoyed it so much.
Nice.
She enjoyed it so much. And she was like, this looks really interesting. And I thought to myself, this is something very, very brave that Disney Plus is doing,
Absolutely.
Like MCU in general.
Yeah.
Just doing this sort of very quirky show that, this is not something extremely new in the world of cinema, because we had black and white episodes of The X-Files, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think Buffy also did the very similar thing when they played with the setup and they showing the scenes of the universe. But this reminds me more of David Lynch's Twin Peaks than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you were ever a fan of Twin Peaks, because for me Twin Peaks was this TV show that kind of redefined the TV a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how we watch it, how the discussion is happening around the one episode, what is actually gonna happen in the next episode, what is happening in the world that we seeing, and on the very first glimpse, Twin Peaks is just this kind of regular TV show, a little bit funny, when the cop goes to, like, the CIA agent goes to town, he likes coffee and he likes pie and he's looking for a serial killer, but there is such a dark undertone there, and it's kind of coming up more and more in each episodes, and this reminded me of that. This reminded me of this innocent, setup that is actually leading to something else, and I think this is the biggest compliment I can give to this TV show, to remind me of one of my favorite things on the TV ever, which is Twin Peaks. Mm-hmm. Having this, like you said, when you show the scenes of the show, when you reveal there is something there. One thing that worries me though, Connor, is that the setup or the payoff that's going to be delivered is going to be mainly for the geek fans and the geek boys and the geek girls, and probably most of the people who are not into MCU, they're not going to care about it that much. That's the only thing. I'm afraid it's too early to say anything.
Yeah.
However, you know, like all the winks to like Stark Industries and then to Hydra and you know, whatever we see there, this is kind of like you have to sit deep in there. You have to sit deep and you have to want to discover those secrets. And I think there is enough people out there who love this universe and are willing to actually sit for hours and talk about the meaning of this and that and how this is going to tie up and what's going to come out next. But there are also a lot of people who don't really care about it. And we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the most interesting things to watch on TV right now.
And I think you're right too, because like I have to say that I think that's something that the MCU itself got right, is that like the movies themselves are interlinked and there are threads that connect one to the other, but you really don't need to know if you don't want to. You can go and watch some of these movies or many of these movies and just enjoy the movie itself. You get more from it if you know the other stuff. And I think that's what's going to be sort of similar here. I think like, I think that Kevin Feige, I don't know, did you see Ben Affleck's comments about Kevin Feige?
No.
Let's just say Ben Affleck wants to direct a Marvel movie, right? He called Kevin Feige the best producer that's ever lived on a podcast during the week or last week, I think. He referred to that. He basically said that no one knows more than Kevin Feige what the audience really wants and is able to give them that exactly. And that's what makes a great producer, right? It's knowing all of this stuff and knowing exactly what an audience member wants when they go to watch this as a collective, like audience as a collective, like what do they want from this project? And I think he's went from strength to strength doing it as well. And this looks like, you know, so far, just even with this introduction of WandaVision, it looks like he's completely landed this on the TV side as well, right? Where he's been like, look, you know, there is absolutely a place here where we can go and make these crazy type shows, and they work on a platform like Disney Plus. This would not work if you had a 2-hour movie about Wanda and Vision set in multiple sort of time periods. I don't think it would work really well. Episodic, week to week, I think it works perfect. And and that's that understanding. He's like, no, like people get it. And kind of going back to what I said with Star Wars earlier, it's like the universe is now established and built, and you have people that care about it and they want to know more about it. And what really works is when you do other things within that universe. And the MCU has been doing that more and more and more over the past few years. And I think that the Disney Plus stuff will really lean into it, where we will see things like WandaVision, which will have this kind of like weird horror style to it, mystery kind of like X-Files sort of thing going on. Then we'll get like the sort of action thriller spy sort of stuff happening with Winter Soldier. Then we're going to get like a time cop type thing going on with Loki. Then when you flip over to the actual movies themselves, like you've got Sam Raimi doing the Doctor Strange movie, which sounds like it's going to be really dark and actually leaning heavily into a horror movie. It feels like Feige has hit that perfect note where it's like, the real thing here is like the universe is established. People know the characters, they love them, we can introduce them, but what we want to do is we want to make great stories. And to tell great stories, we have to give creative people with good ideas and good platforms and interesting genre choices and mixing and matching genres, etc., etc. We need to give all of these people all of this stuff, hand it over to them, and then, you know, Feige and his team, we will steer the ship. right? And I think that that's what WandaVision is like. You know, I was so excited for this because this is the first Phase 4 stuff that we've had, right? We haven't had any other, like, you know, the last thing we had was Far From Home, which I seen when I first met you. It was, right? Like, that's how long ago it was, right? Like, that was the last time we had this Marvel stuff. So it's been such a wait to get to this point. So there was part of me that was like, okay, I really, really hope they land this. I really, really hope that this is good. And then the reviews started coming out, and I know the reviewers got to see like the first 3 episodes, and they were really strong in their opinions about it and how good it was. And I have to say that, like, I text you as a joke, but I feel like this is definitely a strong, like, powerful middle finger to the Martin Scorsese crowd of like, oh, it's just superhero stuff. It's like, yeah, you could take your ideas and shove them up your fucking ass. Cause like, we're fucking here. We're gonna tell fun, fucking cool stories. All right, because that's at the end of the day. I keep saying it on all of these episodes, Rado. That's what people care about. They want to be told good stories. All right, and if a good story has, you know, a 400-year-old Robert De Niro acting like a 20-year-old Robert De Niro, then so be it. Some people might find that interesting, but the rest of us, we're here for WandaVision. All right, that's what we're here for. Let's fucking go.
I hope you not gonna bring this quote you sent probably to many friends, not only to me. Without people like Martin Scorsese, without people who push the boundaries of cinema like David Lynch, you would not seen WandaVision or WandaVision today the way it is. That's just the reality. And whatever we discussed whatever Martin said, but you can't just say he is a silly old man. He is a little bit, but
yeah, I think he knows what he's doing. I think he knows exactly what he's doing as well. But that being said, and I think the same. I really love Christopher Nolan, and I can imagine Nolan thinks the same. Actually, I'm not so sure about that. Sometimes I think actually Nolan would really like to do a Marvel movie. You know, I think it'd be like I could genuinely see it being something that he would be interested in doing, because, you know, if he was allowed the creative decisions, that he didn't have to tie in too much.
He did the comic book movie. Let's yeah, of course. Why wouldn't he do the Marvel movie this way?
I feel like people would be like, no, he wouldn't do a Marvel movie. And I think that Scorsese's that kind of the impression that you get from him when he calls it theme parks. They're like going to theme parks or whatever, and he's like, yeah, but none of us real directors would ever really want to do that. And then you've got like Taika Waititi over here being like, hi, just, you know,
not a real director.
Yeah, you know. Did you watch Jojo Rabbit again?
We live in postmodern times, Connor.
We do.
And WandaVision is a postmodern TV show. Absolutely, it is. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to mention quickly, it's directed by Matt Shakman, who's directed all the episodes, and he used to be an actor in the sitcoms in the 80s. And he also started directing. He directed plenty of stuff, and he directed Game of Thrones and a few episodes of Game of Thrones,
The Boys, Succession, Game of Thrones, The Good Wife, Fargo, 6 Feet Under, One Tree Hill, Mad Men, like, yeah, Everybody Hates Chris, It's Always Sunny, Psych. He's been around, done a lot of big projects.
Yeah. Great stuff. WandaVision, episodes 1 and 2 available right now on Disney Plus, and we look forward to Fridays when we can watch the next episode of that TV show.
Yes.
Connor, it's been a very long episode. So this is the proper first episode of 2021, and we've discussed pretty much everything. We had a special guest doing the interview. We discussed your favorite film of the 2020, Wonder Woman 1984. We discussed my favorite film of 2020, which was Midnight Sky. It was a fantastic thing. So I'll just tell you very quickly for how to find us. We have a website for where you can find our episodes. It's deepblockbusters.net. You can find us online on Twitter at blockbusterspod, at @rdefolta, and at DesignConnor. And on Letterboxd, when we review and rate the films we watched, Deep Blockbusters Radox and Conor Boyle. You'll find the links to those accounts in the show notes. Our theme music is by Scott Holmes, and you can find more of his work at scottholmesmusic.com. Artwork for our podcast was created by Conor Boyle, and the episode was edited by myself. Our podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you're getting your podcasts from. Until next week, when we're going to talk more about Disney, DCE, and some stuff that people are interested in, we say goodbye. Bye, Conor.
Goodbye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And like that, he's gone.
Question from myself to everyone else who's listening. Why people keep watching Harry Potter movies again and again? Apart from one film directed by Alfonso Cuarón, they're not all that great. Convince me if I'm wrong, Conor. What's happening with Harry Potter? Is it right now on like a discount somewhere, or is it what's going on? Because I'm just going to explain that I talked to two people this week, and both people said, I'm just watching Harry Potter movies. There are so many good movies on other streaming platforms. Why you keep watching the stuff you've seen 50 times?
I mean, like I watched Hot Fuzz this week as well, so I did.
That's
so
fine.
like,
Okay.
You know, like I keep seeing all of these new movies come out, and I go back and be like, hey, but wouldn't it be great if I just watched The Godfather, you know, instead?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I get it.
Like I live in a house with an avid Harry Potter fan, and said person has wanted to rewatch these movies many times. As a matter of fact, I don't think we've ever fully watched them together, and it just so happened to kind of coincide for us with some time that we had off work, and then they did go on sale on the iTunes store at the same time. So I was always kind of hesitant to watch them. I think they are on Now TV, but Now TV's quality is terrible. And I was always kind of hesitant to watch them for that reason. But a few kind of like interesting observations from me with Harry Potter is, first of all, I agree with you. I don't think that these movies are very good. So I really don't. And I thought this time I would give them a little bit of a shot, because I've never actually seen them all in kind of a consecutive order to see how one leads into the other and they kind of build off each other. Or if they completely fail to do that because there are, 7 or 8 movies and they have multiple directors. And so it was quite interesting as a little bit of an exercise to watch them all for the first time and see like how the tone changes, because it's like Chris Columbus for the first two, and I think those two still are my favorite, and they hold up pretty well in terms of their special effects and stuff like that. For movies that came out in the very early 2000s with budgets that probably weren't as big as something like Lord of the Rings, they still look pretty good all around. Not fantastic and have certainly aged, but not so poor that it takes you out of watching the movie. But there's a sense of at that stage, like the kids are all very, very young. They're obviously, they're children at this point. And they, having Chris Columbus directed it, it has this sense of charm and joy that I find really, really, that I find worked an awful lot. And I kind of captured that sense of magic about that kind of come from the books. And I've never really read all of the books either, to be honest. I read the first few of them, and then I kind of was like, okay, I'm out. So after that, then it starts to change, and the movies progressively get darker and darker, and the kids, they grow up, and by the final movies, they are adults at this point. And sure, their acting gets way better, but the movies, their tone and their color palettes and everything gets so dark by the end of it that there really is so little joy in any of the final movies. Even at the end of the part 2, it didn't feel like I was happy with the resolution that kind of came from it all. You know, like they defeat the big bad boss, and you know, like they go on to live these like seemingly happy lives and have children, and it's like, yeah, but I don't get any sense of joy from any of it. It's totally and utterly missing through the last movies, and I think it really suffers because of it. Some of the directing is really good, and you know, like the Curzon one has some incredible moments. That it definitely has a sense of artistry that the others don't. And I would be fascinated to know, I've never looked into it, as to why or how David Yates kind of came from nothing to having like 7 Harry Potter movies under his belt by the time you include, like, he's doing the full what's it called, trilogy, you know, Fantastic Beasts trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Or 4 or 5 movies, however many movies that is. Like, he's directing all of those as well. It's like, how did this guy, who I feel like directed some of like the more grim and miserable movies in this series, and to be fair, the story at that point kind of calls for a darker tone for sure, but it's just the movies are so devoid of like happiness or joy that the first movies kind of oozed in, you know. And ultimately, I think, as I was watching it, I couldn't help but think, and this is probably my biggest point, is that I think J.K. Rowling created an incredible world and interesting characters, but I feel like the direction of the plot started to fall apart as every book or movie came out. That the world itself became more interesting than what was actually happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely,
like it's like this universe is really cool, and there's all these amazing little things, and you know, I'm sure the books were filled with so much more detail than the movie can really kind of convey. But it's like, this is all incredible, and it's just what's happening I don't care about, really. I just don't. And I feel like that's with Star Wars an awful lot in many ways, right? It's like Lucas built this incredible world, and then like as
very
the
similar
movies
story,
progress, right? It's like by the time you get down the line, you're like, I'm losing interest in the story that you're telling. You know, I don't care about like galactic trade at this point, George. You know, like I just don't. So like I feel like there is some similarities there for sure.
I think a lot of people will be like essentially drawn to those movies because this is the nostalgia of like reading the books.
Yeah, and, big time in this house. There was many tears shed for, and I think that I do think that had you read the books, you do get more from these movies. I feel like you have a better attachment to the characters because you're bringing what you know about them to the movie, whereas you know you don't see a lot of, say, Dobby in the movies. He's actually really not in them at all, like screen time wise, very little, and then he's supposed to have this big impactful moment, and I'm kind of going, yeah, but I don't care. Like, I don't. So what? He's I've barely had any time with him whatsoever. So you know, yeah, that was probably way longer than it needed to be on why people are maybe watching Harry Potter. They're on sale, and we've got time.
Yeah, that's the other thing as well. And I always kind of like, I get your point, and I sit in front of a TV and I switch all the platforms on and I jump from one to another. And it's like, what to watch next? And suddenly you see, okay, Harry Potter movies. Okay, you've not seen them in ages. You know, you go for the comfort food instead of like trying to, you know, find something you've not watched. And, you know, okay, it happens to me as well. Sometimes I rewatch Solo, because this is one of my favorite Star Wars movies, and yeah, I enjoy it. Yeah, obviously. Please let us know what's your favorite guilty pleasure or your favorite comfort food. Or guilty pleasure is the word. What's your favorite comfort food in terms of the films? What films you're going back to? I'm probably thinking Lord of the Rings trilogy is one of them. Star Wars definitely, but what other films? Not necessarily, you know, big kind of series you can go back to and just watch it. I'm happy. I'm kind of curious to hear what other people are watching.